real quick. College football playoff power rankings. Where do you guys come down on this whole, I don't know, this whole belief? Well, Gesundheit, my friend.
Yeah, sorry.
You're having kind of the struggle bus today. Jake hates me, which is fine. Where do you guys come down on this right here? Do you guys believe that this is accurate? Because this whole thing that we're doing with the college football playoff seems to have hit a nerve amongst college football fans. Why is this controversial? Which I don't know. Who's the best team in college football? I think right now you have to say Georgia. I think number 2 in the rankings would have to be Ohio State. 3 would have to be Utah. And I think 4 right now has to be Miami. I think those are the 4 likely conference champions. Why is that controversial?
I think that people don't have a great grip on how this new college football playoff system works yet. Like, I know it seems simple. We've talked about it. We've beat it into the ground, right? Conference champions plus the highest ranked G5 champion. Like, it's a pretty straightforward system. But, I think this graphic, if you're, an ACC fan, you're like, damn, dude, Florida State's not on this graphic. Even though Florida State shouldn't be on this graphic.
No.
But like, we know what ACC fans about. We know the homerism, if you will, for Florida State. So like, I don't know. I don't think that this is that controversial. I do think it's a little taboo to be seeing UNLV on the graphic just from a visual standpoint. Like, I'm not disagreeing that they have a great shot to be there. But I think if you're think about, your average college football fan working the 9 to 5, not really plugged in. You're gonna watch game day, and you're gonna that's basically the level of involvement you have. You're gonna be surprised when you see UNLV on the graphic, or you're gonna be surprised when you see Miami sitting there instead of Florida State. I was golfing with some random people 2 weeks ago, and they're like, "Oh, well, why does Utah play all these terrible teams to start the year? Why do these teams get a free pass?" And I'm having this conversation thinking to myself, yeah, the average fan who, is doing whatever they do and they got kids and they're doing all this stuff has no idea like how it works. You're clueless is strong, but I just think that most people are not plugged in yet to how this new system works. And so we get controversy and drama because people just have a lack of understanding. And I actually think that on 3 graphic is pretty accurate. I think that, for me, I have Texas as the best team in the country right now. I think Georgia has to continue to win games, and I would love to see Texas and Georgia match up. I think Miami is in that top 4 just by ranking. I think they're outstanding, and I think I want Ole Miss to be higher, but Lane Train's going to have to prove that he can win the big game, and he hasn't done that yet. So that's why I can't put them up there. But for the most part, the teams you have on the graphic at On 3, I would say are pretty accurate. So I don't really understand the drama outside of people just not understanding how the system works.
I think there is one glaring omission. Iowa State. How is Iowa State not one of the first 4 out? Are you telling me that Iowa State, with that win in the Cyhawk, is not more qualified than K-State, is not more qualified than Oak State, is certainly not more qualified right now than Oregon? Are you telling me that win is not one of the better wins in the country so far? Now, week 3, I totally get it. But are you telling me that Iowa State doesn't belong more than I mean, you look at the first 4 out at the bottom? Come on. I think when I look at this graphic, I think, and maybe this goes back to San Diego State and why they don't want to be in the conference, or maybe, I don't know. But are you telling me that the Big-12 is getting the respect that I think it's earned so far? Because I don't think they are. I mean, I look at some of the other teams. Do I think Texas is the best team in the country? I do not personally. I think Georgia's the best team. Texas certainly is in the conversation. But are you telling me that Texas, if there was a Texas-Georgia conference championship game, you believe Texas would win that game?
Oh, I think they're right in that game. Yeah.
I think they're in that game, but I think they're better. My question is Texas better than Ole Miss? I think they probably are, but that's going to be a shootout. It better be a shootout or Texas isn't going to win that game.
I think the interesting thing with Kirby and Georgia is, that game they played with Alabama 2 years ago, I think it was now, where Georgia loses that game in kind of surprising fashion. I'm not going to sit here and say that Kirby is prone to losing big games because he's won so many big games. I mean,
that conference championship game was this past season.
Like I just look at this with Kirby and I say, I think Sark's doing a really good job, and I think I'd really have to do a lot of homework on that game and look at, like, that's a game where you got to look at the matchups and see, like, who's Jahdae Barron going to be on most of the time? What's Georgia's tendency in big games in neutral sites, as an example? Like, do they run more? Do they pass more? Like, I think that's a really detail oriented game, but I have no trouble seeing Texas having the capability of beating Georgia. I think it is. That's why we need them to play.
And I agree with that. I don't disagree that Texas is capable.
Yeah.
But I think, dude, Georgia is one of the best teams I've seen this year.
I guess the hard part is what Texas did to Michigan wasn't just that Michigan sucked. Texas, like, physically and emotionally broke Michigan, and that was a little surprising to me. Like,
I just think they exposed Michigan.
Yeah,
because I think we're so early in the season. If they don't win another significant game, if they get trounced by okay, that's a conversation we can have. But I'm not quite ready to say that Michigan's dead. I just don't think Michigan's very good, and I've been saying that, and Michigan fans have been pissed about it. But I think that bore fruit this past weekend.
It did.
Domer Wap for $10. Tesla was an analogy of the arrogance of the Pac-12 towards the Big-12, not unlike Tesla to BYD. The handwriting is on the wall. Tariffs can't stop better products. Credit to Brett Yormark and the Big-12. Yeah, I think he deserves a lot of credit. No doubt. Glass City Buck agrees. Broke him.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt. Daniel Dixon, I would love to see Iowa State in the playoffs. You're going to have to keep going because, again, I think Iowa State does not have the easiest route. Now, again, the Cyhawk was a huge win. Arkansas State at Houston, Baylor, that trip to West Virginia really starts a stretch because, again, I don't care where you play UCF. I think they're going to be problematic. Now, that game is in October in Ames. It's going to be chilly. Texas Tech at Kansas. And here's where some of the rubber's meeting the road in the Big 12. Texas Tech is the worst team in the conference right now. Kansas is the most disappointing team in the conference right now. Cincinnati, I think Scott's got that team moving in the right direction. That was a pretty disappointing loss. At Utah, K-State, you're probably going to lose 3 games this year. So that's probably going to knock you out.
I don't know. Is a 3-loss team getting in as one of the first 4 out?
No. Not when it comes to the Big Ten and the SEC. But my question is, does a 3-loss team get into the conference championship game? I don't know. Ask Oak State. Because apparently I'm an idiot. The comment section yesterday on Twitter and Insta Snapface and YouTube was amazing. Oh, you guys just hate Gundy. I don't hate him. I just don't respect him. He doesn't win. Mike Gundy does not win big games in the postseason. And you look at their schedule, you can't spin that they've given up 51 points between South Dakota State and Arkansas. You're at Tulsa this week. That if you do not in an early morning, an 11 o'clock game where you are favored by 20.5 points,
shouldn't be a conversation.
There's nothing to talk about, right? Don't show up here Monday when I'm doing the show alone because Jake won't be here.
We show up.
He doesn't show up. I don't want excuses about how, Tulsa, that mighty win over Arkansas. Oh, wait, they lost to Arkansas State. But their big 62-point performance against Northwestern State. There's no excuse for Oak State not to come out and absolutely dominate Tulsa. The Golden Hurricanes. There's no excuse. You should be firing on all cylinders going into the Utah game. No excuses. None whatsoever. Keith Carl. UCF, Utah, and Farmageddon are the games to watch for Iowa State. I think you have some others, but everybody's just writing off Kansas. I got it. That's a quality head coach. Got to believe they figure it out. Texas only has Oklahoma and Georgia left as ranked teams, and Oklahoma has not looked strong. I agree.
That's what I'm saying. I think for Texas, Georgia's going to decide how far you go. I mean, if you beat Georgia, obviously you're catapulted way up. If you lose to Georgia, that's a terrible loss at that time of year.
And again, much like I talk about with the Big 12 running themselves into each other, the SEC doesn't have any gimme games. The SEC does not. Man, you look at some of the schedules in the SEC, and we can pretend and we can hope and we can wonder. Texas doesn't have the easiest road. I don't think Missouri has the easiest road. I'll remind you of that. But you start looking at Texas. They've got UTSA this weekend. Now, I think they're 71.5-point favorites. They're 33.5-point favorites. How much Arch Manning do we see?
A lot.
UL Monroe, Mississippi State. Did I mention that they don't go on the road until Vandy on Halloween weekend? UTSA, UL Monroe, Mississippi State, Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma, is that on the road? It's at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. Is that really on the road?
We know how that game goes, man.
Anything can happen. Georgia at Vanderbilt, Florida at Arkansas, Kentucky, and at Texas A&M.
Let's say you lose to Oklahoma and you beat Georgia. You're still cooking with gas.
You're in the college football playoff, and you're in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, you're still fine.
How about that Alabama-Wisconsin game this weekend? Am I the only one that thinks Alabama minus 16 at Camp Randall is a little dicey? I think that's going to be very interesting. That's not UL Monroe.
No, you're going to have to play well to beat them.
Right? And again, I think Missouri's probably underrated, but I don't think there's an easy game in that conference.